All right, so if you have your Bibles, we're going to read a passage out of Matthew chapter 8. It'll be we try to arrange a storm today so that we could get the full experience. Some of you are maybe thinking about sleeping on the boat. You know, what did Jesus do? Matthew 8, verse 23, I'm going to read down to verse 34. And when he got into the boat, like you guys did, his disciples followed him, and behold, there arose a great storm on the sea, so that the boat was being swamped by the waves, but he was asleep. And they went and woke him, saying, Save us, Lord, we are perishing. And he said to them, Why are you afraid, O you of little faith? Then he rose and rebuked the winds and the sea, and there was great calm. And the men marveled, saying, What sort of man is this, that even winds and sea obey him? And when he came to the other side, to the country of the Gadarenes, 2 demon-possessed men met him, coming out of the tomb, so fierce that no one could pass that way. And behold, they cried out, What have you to do with us, O Son of God? Have you come here to torment us before the time? Now a herd of many pigs was feeding at some distance from them. And the demons begged him, saying, If you cast us out, send us away into the herd of pigs. And he said to them, Go. So they came out and went into the pigs, and behold, the whole herd rushed down the steep bank into the sea and drowned in the waters. The herdsmen fled, and going into the city, they told everything, especially what had happened to the demon-possessed men. And behold, all the city came out to meet Jesus. And when they saw him, they begged him to leave their region. So, the first part of this passage, before what we just read, is the story where this part that we did read is the story that we would generally consider when we're out here on the Sea of Galilee, and we're like, well, it's not storming. Not very many of us are sleeping right now, but we can kind of get the idea. This is the location. The story starts, though, over in Capernaum, where we will go later today, where Peter lived. It was kind of like the early headquarters of the ministry of Jesus. There was a Roman centurion who approached Jesus, and I love the fact that God did these kinds of things early on. Jesus had a ministry to the Samaritan woman. Jesus had the ministry to the Roman centurion. Later, Peter is going to have a ministry to another Roman centurion, that he's breaking down these barriers right away. He's doing significant things with people that the Jewish people of that day would say, well, we shouldn't be doing anything with these people. So this Roman centurion approached Jesus and showed great faith, knowing that all he needed to do was speak a word, and his sick, paralyzed servant would be healed. And so Jesus turns to his disciples. This is a teaching opportunity. And he said that this man that they would have hated, they would have been like, Jesus, why are you talking to that guy? And Jesus turns to them and says, this man that they would have hated, this non-Jew, this oppressor, this symbol of Roman authority, had great faith. And then he told his disciples that he has yet to find anyone in Israel who expressed this kind of faith. Then he said something shocking, profound, something that would have been downright offensive to them. He said that guys like this Roman oppressor would come from the east and the west, and they would recline at the table of Abraham in the kingdom of heaven. Jesus said that. Now later in the passage we're going to look at Caesarea by the sea. We're going to go to 2 Caesareas. But the one by the sea, Paul's giving his testimony, and the moment he mentions something about Gentiles becoming believers and being accepted by God, the whole place went into a riot. So what Jesus is saying here is revolutionary. So what about the sons of the kingdom? The people of Israel, specifically the religious leaders of Israel. Jesus said that they would be thrown into outer darkness. Then, to give emphasis and authority to this shocking and revolutionary message, Jesus healed the servant in that moment without even being there. After the account with the centurion, Jesus healed Peter's mother-in-law. Then he cast out demons from many. Then he healed all who were sick. So many mighty things were happening over there in Capernaum. And the disciples were probably thinking, man, we need to set up a big top. Like, what is happening here is big. We need to put out some flyers. We need to take up an offering. Capernaum is going to be known as the miracle capital of the world. So as they're thinking about maybe establishing the miracle ministry of Jesus in Capernaum, Jesus declared that he wasn't going to be established. Foxes have holes, birds have nests, but the Son of Man has nowhere to lay his head. And as they were thinking, I'd like to follow Jesus, but I have some arrangements to make first, Jesus said, follow me and leave the dead to bury the dead. So then he made these statements. He gave them a chance to follow. He left the miracle crusade opportunity in Capernaum. He didn't wait for the disciples to claim their inheritance. He did something that didn't make any sense at all. Great things were happening there, and Jesus said, you know what? I'm going to get on the boat. We're going somewhere else. In this passage, he declares authority over several different things. He declares authority over human agendas, over sickness, over the storm, over there in the Gadarenes, over the powers of darkness. And this is what we see Jesus doing many times over. He says amazing things, then he declares his authority to say amazing things by performing a miracle or by casting out a demon. And we're going to revisit this theme while we're traveling around Israel. Jesus went to certain places with great purpose. We remember the story of him going to places like, the Gadarenes, Caesarea Philippi, where we'll be going this week, or even the possible site of the Transfiguration, which many believe to be Mount Hermon. Anytime Jesus went over that way, he was making a very specific and unique declaration to the powers of darkness. He invaded the places where human agendas reigned, where sickness reigned, where disaster reigned, where evil forces reigned, and he declared his authority. When the disciples got on the boat, up in the northwestern side of the sea, they had a few things in their mind, and they reflected on the words that Jesus spoke. People who weren't Jews from the east and from the west were going to be part of God's kingdom, and were going to be with Abraham in eternity. They were probably thinking about this. Jesus said that. That's revolutionary. Who were the people from the east? Well, they weren't Jewish people. That was originally the land of the Phoenicians, conquered by the Persians, who were then conquered by Alexander the Great, then settled by the Hellenists. So when he said that, he wasn't speaking of the Hebrew people. To the west, not the children of Israel. To the east, the place was even worse. They raised and actually ate pigs over there. So, that wasn't good. The east and the north, especially up in Dan, especially Caesarea Philippi, those areas were extremely pagan. And you'll see how wicked that region was when we go to see those sites in the Golan Heights. So they were also thinking about the miracles when they got on the boat. Not only this revolutionary message, but the miracles. Demon-possessed people were set free. He literally had authority over demons. The sick, even every one of them that came to him were healed. These amazing things were going on in their minds as they got on this boat with Jesus. And then those hard words that Jesus said to the scribe in verse 21, to one of them, a disciple, Jesus said that, leave the dead to bury their own dead line. To one of the guys who was identified as a disciple. So they're thinking about that too. All of these heavy messages, all of these strange things that Jesus had said to them. Their emotions are bouncing back and forth, and now they're on the sea and they're heading east, and they're wondering why they're even going there. Why in the world would they be going to that side of the water? Nothing good is over there, and probably didn't even know that they were just along for the ride. Jesus wasn't concerned. As they worried about all these things, he took a nap. They would have a couple significant storm experiences with Jesus on the lake. This was the first. It communicated another powerful message to the disciples, as if being amazed that he declared authority over their agendas, as being amazed that he declared authority over sickness. They were amazed that he declared authority over the demons. Now they would be amazed that he had authority over the wind itself. Which leaves me asking, how many things does Jesus need to do before they realized, or before we realized, that he can do anything? It's like, what's he going to do next? What can't he do? They were probably wondering. And I think Jesus was proving a point early on in his ministry that he can do anything. Now, how many times does Jesus need to show his faithfulness to us till we learn in all areas he is faithful? These guys were learning it all in one day. Like in one day, they were getting a crash course. How many times does Jesus need to show his love till we learn in all areas that he is love? The disciples were getting this crash course in the overarching authority, ability, and faithfulness of Jesus. But he had one more stop to make in this lesson. He had already proven that he could cast out demons, but that was back in the land. That was, for the most part, in a place that was considered Jewish. That was in a land that was originally given by God as an inheritance to Israel. That was God's domain, God's territory. But this time he was going into someone else's territory. Not God's territory. He was going into an evil place. This time he was going into the domains of the powers of darkness. When we read about the powers and the principalities that we wrestle against, we're being told that there are dark powers who are princes who rule over certain areas, and that's what principality means. Literally, a state ruled by a prince. So when we see principality, that means there's an area ruled by a prince, and that prince is a power of darkness. So Jesus was going to take his display of authority to the next level by casting out legion and by letting it know that the rulers who had domain over that region, even over there, on that side of the water, well, their days were numbered. So let's end this message by looking ahead. The mission is accomplished. Jesus has fulfilled the Father's will. He has died as the Scriptures declared. He's risen again as the Scriptures declared. This is the gospel message. And then here's the outcome. We're going to come back to this passage a few times this week. Here's the outcome. Colossians chapter 2, verses 13 through 15. And you, this is Paul speaking, and he's speaking to Gentiles. He's trying to encourage them that they are actually accepted into God's kingdom. And you, who were dead in your trespasses and the uncircumcision of your flesh, God made alive together with him, having forgiven us all our trespasses by canceling the record of debt that stood against us with its legal demands. And he set aside, nailing it to the cross. And then verse 15, this is significant, because this is what Jesus was beginning to do even on this trip. Verse 15, he disarmed the rulers and authorities and put them to open shame by triumphing over them in him. So that trip to the Gadarenes was a shot over the bow to the powers of darkness, to the principalities. They were about to be disarmed. They were about to be put to open shame. They were about to be defeated. So in a way, this trip in Matthew chapter 8 wasn't just a lesson to teach the disciples about the all-encompassing authority of Jesus. It was a lesson for the powers and the principalities too, that their days were numbered. And this is a lesson that Jesus will declare again in Caesarea Philippi when we go up there. And we'll talk kind of about this theme again in that place. And I believe again later at the end as he goes into that region again on the Mount of Transfiguration.